Your Bibles are open to Proverbs 1 and verse number 7. The Bible states, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." I am dealing with an impossible reconciliation. An impossible reconciliation. Christian education should not be the exception to the rule as it has become in recent years, but Christian education should be the norm. According to the Bible, all education that is truly enlightening and worthwhile is biblical Christian education. Now this is clear from reading Psalm 110 and verse number 10, where David records, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do his commandments. His praise endureth forever." David's son Solomon, who wrote the Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, stated in Proverbs 1:7, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." It does seem strange that in the information age, true knowledge producing wisdom and instruction is scoffed at by the very ones who purport themselves to be enlightened and educated. These worldly wise scoffers use their system of education, quote unquote, so-called, I think it's a system of indoctrination, as a means of puffing up the flesh and boasting about what they are able to attain. These are not truly educated at all, but rather they are blinded by their own slavery to a system that never will produce what they purport to be looking for. Paul read their rights clear in Romans chapter number 1 and verse number 21 and 22, when the Apostle Paul stated, "Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful." Now notice there is a downward trend here. "But became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened." The more they lean on their humanistic philosophy, the more ensnared and duped, confused, defeated, disillusioned, dismayed, filthy, unprofitable, useless, ignorant, shaken, hellish, troubled, defiled, vexed, violent, wanton, and wrong they become. When a man refuses the existence of God and denies the existence of God, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And when a man rejects that as the foundation for all knowledge, the only thing that can happen is a downward spiral into depraved humanistic philosophy. The result of their unguided wanderings that we find is simply this: professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Secular education is the very antithesis of what it attempts to be. Professing themselves to be wise, they are fools. I spoke to a man at church the other day, and he is in the public education system. We were talking about the school where he had taught, and he said the administration there in the school was wicked. And I would think he'd be making those statements about the student body. But rather than making those comments about the student body, he was making those comments about the administration. You see, the secular, state-owned and operated school system is a failed experiment that graduates students that cannot read, cannot spell, cannot diagram a sentence, cannot write, cannot count, cannot think, and cannot communicate logically. They cannot maintain a line or a train of thought. They cannot recite history. They cannot name the first president. They will not pledge to the American flag. They have no patriotism. They will not sacrifice themselves for their country. They will not sacrifice themselves for their neighbor or their family, or for that matter, even their children. Hedonism is taught. Sloth is encouraged. Substandard has now become the standard, while students striving for excellence are ridiculed, undermined, taunted as being bigoted, and discouraged. We are living in an age now when a student, especially a minority student, determines that they are going to excel in education and that they are going to prepare themselves for life and prepare themselves for an honest work in the course of life, are discouraged from doing that, made fun of, and ridiculed. Now, being your own man in our society is wrong. In fact, we are living in such a perverted age in which being a man, not being your own man, but just being a man, is now ridiculed. You realize that there's a segment of society that hates manhood. And they certainly hate alpha males that know where they're going and what they're doing and are determined to move forward. Being your own man is now criticized as wrong. Thinking on your own is not politically correct. They want to get you in line. Well, the science is settled. If it's science, it's never settled. The science is settled and there is global warming. And I say, no, there's not any man-made global warming. There may be cycles the earth goes through, but man is not the cause of it. And immediately you become ridiculed. They say, well, the earth is the product of evolution. And I say, no, God created the heavens and the earth according to the Bible. And immediately you are ridiculed and held up to ridicule. Having your own opinion is ridiculed, especially if your opinion is biblically based and based upon the Bible. It is totally out of sync with the system and with society. You understand that we are being governed by a bunch of would-be tyrants in a bunch of alphabet soup agencies, the bureaucratic state of unelected officials that no one has elected, and they are not accountable to the voting populace, and they are controlling everything that's going on, from the EPA to the Department of Education to the Department of Commerce. These unelected officials are controlling everything going on. And they say you need to get in sync with the system. You need to get on board with the system. Tragically, there are parents who think that they might just as well send their children to a secular school, and they will remain morally unscarred by the constant secular inoculation, which takes place 35 hours a week for 9 months, or for that matter, longer than that, for 12 years. Now, how does one survive such as that? Here recently in Greenville County, we had a group of transgenders that wanted to put their pornographic and graphic literature right in the main lobby of the library system in Greenville County, and the library board pushed back against that, which they rightly should have done. And there was a terrible onslaught of a vocal minority of people that came out to one of the county commission meetings and ridiculed and mocked at the county commissioners for wanting to put those graphic books behind a barrier so the children couldn't get to them, and so that underage people couldn't get to them. And one mother even brought a 6-year-old little boy and held him up to the microphone, and he lectured the county commission and said, I have a right to read these books. A little 6-year-old boy, I have a right to read these books. I don't fault the 6-year-old little boy as much as I fault the 6-year-old boy's mama and daddy for allowing that boy to be exposed to such material and literature as that. Now, if a child does survive this onslaught of 35 hours a week for 9 months a year for 12 years, they are certainly the exception. They are not the rule. In the face of this, most any sacrifice is a worthwhile sacrifice to see to it that children are properly reared and educated scripturally. The Bible is very clear that godly wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, we are to seek godly wisdom at any cost. And we should seek to protect our children from the onslaught of child traffickers and perverts at any cost. Now, my time has gotten away from me on the broadcast today. But the Lord willing, on the program tomorrow, the Friday broadcast, I will continue with the Lord's help dealing with the matter of an impossible reconciliation. Be sure not to change your radio dial. Be with us tomorrow.
And conducted by Dr. Ben Carper. Correspondence may be sent to the